Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, Tommy and I are diving deep into the Jordan Binnington Nazem Kadri controversy. We're not looking forward to doing it, but there is a conversation that needs to be had, so we're going to be getting into that. And then we're going to be moving on, talking about games 2 and 3. The Blues got a win, but they also got a loss. So they sit at down 2-1 in the series. And then finally, in segment 3, we're going to be previewing the pivotal game 4 matchup tonight. Busy, action-packed episode. Lots to talk about. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm Josh Hyman, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Thomas Welch. And like I said, we got a busy episode for you today. First things first, we're going to be diving into the Jordan Binnington injury and the controversy that followed. Going to be a tough segment. We didn't want to talk about something like this. We hate that this conversation needs to be had, but it does. So plenty of hockey talk still to come, though. So we'll get through this segment and we'll get to hockey talk. But first, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, before we get into any conversation about Nazem Kadri and Jordan Binnington, it is important to note that both Tommy and I vehemently agree that Blues fans have crossed the line. There is no room for threats or racism or verbal attacks on social media to any player in any sport at any time, no matter the circumstance. And that's why I said we're both pretty disappointed to be sitting here having to record this segment and talk about it in the way that we are. However, incidents unfolded over the weekend that, led to us having to have this conversation. Again, it should be a no-brainer, but we wanted to just make sure we both gave our take on that and said that, there was a line that was crossed that goes beyond the game of hockey. And we're both looking forward to hopefully, the necessary action being taken so that everybody can put this behind them.
Yeah, we were also talking about before the podcast that we have, it's been a while since we talked to you guys. We've got a lot of content we want to cover. And unfortunately, part of this episode has to be spent covering something as disgusting as this, as people going into the messages and threatening not only Kadri, but his family and just racism as a whole. Like, all of that stuff has no place in the sport of hockey, absolutely no place in St. Louis or its fan base. So to say that I'm disappointed and Josh is disappointed, I think is the understatement of the century. It's just despicable. It's disgusting. And I expected better from St. Louis as a fan base as a whole.
Yeah. The thing is, we're speaking from a point of privilege. We're Blues fans. We have the quote unquote right to be upset with Nazem Kadri and all that. I can't imagine what it's like to be an Avalanche fan or an Avalanche player right now, dealing with something as far over the line as what transpired. It puts a dark cloud over the rest of the series. And it just brings something way, way bigger than hockey into the game with no business being there. That being said, though, I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on that. There's been a lot covered over the weekend. I do want to get into the hit and the play itself. Again, I want to stress we are separating this entirely from the incidents that occurred off the ice. We do have some hockey to talk about. Again, just unfortunate connotations. That being said, in case you somehow missed it, Nazem Kadri drove to the net, bumped into Kale Rosen. Two of them went into Jordan Binnington. He suffered a pretty significant injury that is going to keep him out the rest of round 2. Obviously, extremely frustrating, extremely disappointing. Jordan Binnington obviously expressed that frustration by throwing a water bottle, which you can't do that. It sets a dangerous precedent. Again, off the ice, you need to sort of just let the game, stay on the ice. So beyond that, Tommy, what did you think of the hit? I mean, I don't think it was dirty. I think it was reckless. I think it was an unfortunate play, but as much as I'm frustrated, as much as I'm disappointed and wish that Jordan Binnington could still be playing, I don't look at that hit and see something equivalent to, for example, what happened to Justin Falk last year, where it was a blatant headshot that kept him out. I see an unfortunate hockey play that maybe a less reckless player would have prevented. However, you can't really fault Nazem Kadri too much for the play. That's my take. Wish it didn't happen, but understand why it did.
Yeah, I think I got to agree with you there. I mean, when you look at all the angles, and I know that there was a video going around that used like geometry and was throwing the lines up, and I think you can pinpoint, minimalize, and go frame by frame on a lot of plays and see a lot of different things. But I think at the end of the day, what I saw when you break it down at full speed is Kadri is obviously going hard to the net, right? As you should, as a hockey player in the playoffs. Like, why would you not go hard to the net? Because eventually there's going to be rebounds sitting there, right? And lo and behold, Jordan Binnington does make the save, but there is a rebound there, and the puck's sitting there with a wide open net in front of Kadri. And obviously Rosen's between them, so he kind of has to go through Rosen to get to the puck, and so he's kind of barreling his way through there. But at the end of the day, when people are talking about he's making a play on the puck, he absolutely is. He's trying to score a goal there and help his team. That being said, I don't think he was trying to avoid contact with Jordan Binnington and didn't mind, getting in his kitchen, as a lot of people like to say. So the end result is Jordan Binnington is knocked out of the series after he was playing lights out hockey since some of the best hockey we've seen from him since 2019. He had a 950, 949, something like that save percentage in the playoffs, which was best out of all active goaltenders. So that is a huge loss for the St. Louis Blues. But like you said, I don't think it's inherently dirty by Kadri. But at the end of the day, the result of his actions do end up injuring Jordan Binnington. But I feel like you can make the comparison that it's similar to what happened with Barbashev, because I think that was a clean hit, and Girard has a broken sternum, which, holy cow, I can only imagine how much pain he is in, and I hope he gets a speedy recovery. But not only is he out for the series, he's out for the entire playoffs. So that is a brutal loss for the Avs as well, as he's a very important part of their defensive core.
Yep, and can't gloss over it. After the game, Nazem Kadri post-interview, Jordan Binnington does throw an empty plastic water bottle at him, which on its own, I don't think is too egregious. I don't think there was any intent or motivation behind it other than frustration at getting injured. However, like I said before, you are a professional. You do have standards to uphold, and as much as I probably would have wanted to throw a water bottle at Nazem Kadri if I were in Jordan Binnington's shoes, you got to understand that sets a dangerous precedent. And once you start taking stuff off the ice, things can get dangerous. Obviously, a water bottle is not going to cause any damage. But again, if that just becomes the norm, it's going to escalate into something that nobody wants to see. So as much as, again, I think it was harmless in a vacuum, overall, it's just something that can't happen. And it's frustrating. I understand where Jordan Binnington is coming from, but also you can't do that. As much as it's a funny highlight, you can't do that.
Yeah, I think you voiced it well. I think it's definitely what they call like a slippery slope, because the more you let that kind of stuff go, the more you're gonna let like sticks getting thrown and stuff. And obviously that's two very different scenarios, but the more you let stuff go, the more they're gonna keep pushing the envelope, right? So I agree with you from that standpoint. I think like you said, like Jordan Binnington has every right to be frustrated. I mean, when you break down what like the roller coaster of a season that he's been through, from being the starter and being on like the favorite to be Team Canada, and then just kind of falling off a cliff in terms of production, losing the starting role to Ville Husso, coming back, getting a prime opportunity towards the end of the season, seizing it, getting a prime opportunity in the playoffs, seizing it, and now playing some of the best hockey we've seen from him in his career. To have that stripped from you, from something that's not even your fault, and something that is as controversial as the play with Kadri, I would be as frustrated as he was. That being said, like you said, it's a slippery slope with the bottle throw. It just can't happen.
Yep. And again, it sucks because now here we are, 10 minutes into the episode. We have yet to talk a single detail of strategy or anything that went right or wrong for the Blues. But here we are. Now here's hoping that, again, I know it's a lot bigger than hockey. It's a lot bigger than us. And this conversation doesn't need to end. Like Tommy and I both said, racism, that sort of thing has no place in hockey. It is a conversation that should be continued to be had. But there are times when, you can put that to the side and hope that people can agree to focus on that when the time is right, because there is a hockey game that we do need to talk about. So again, all our sentiments stay true, and we stand by what we say. However, we're going to try to put that out of the spotlight and just focus on the series as a whole and try to not let it cloud anything. So that being said, in the second segment, we're going to be talking about what went right in Game 2 and what went wrong in Game 3. Make sure you stay tuned for that. But before we get into that, want to tell you guys about one of our newer sponsors, and that is AG1. Now, I talk about this a lot. Well, I used to be a college student. I did graduate on Friday. But when I was in college, I never had time to, eat a healthy meal or do anything when I had classes. I was in my apartment for 30 seconds, going back out. And it left me feeling, slow and sluggish throughout the day. But that is until I discovered AG1. With one little scoop of AG1, you're getting 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all those important things. Plus, they have great sustainability and values. Athletic Greens is a climate neutral certified company, and in 2020, AG purchased carbon credits that support projects protecting old growth rainforests. Plus, in 2020, AG donated over 1.2 million meals to kids. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. That being said, we'll be right back with the second half of today's episode. All right, Tommy. So before we get into the bad news, that was the Blues' loss, they did get a win in pretty convincing fashion, coming away with a 4-1 victory over the Colorado Avalanche in Colorado in Game 2, giving me a lot of optimism for the series. And honestly, even though they did lose, that optimism still remains because I think they did a lot of things right in that game. The defense was stellar. Binnington was really great, but again, I think that was a product of the defense, the way that the defense was playing, which gives me optimism that Husso can do the same. And the offense is continuing to play well. David Perron obviously continuing to torch whatever team he's playing against. Ryan O'Reilly is dominating. Need to see a little more out of that, Thomas, Tarasenko, Buchnevich grouping. Again, I think they're going to be split up again tonight, but lots to take away from that, Tommy. What were some of the biggest positives that you saw in that victory?
I think the biggest positive for me was honestly, from my assessment and watching these games, since Game 1, I feel like the Blues, when you talk about adjustments, I feel like we haven't really, especially me, like I haven't gotten a chance to talk on this pod about the full-on adjustments that Craig Berube's made in these playoffs so far. But he's got to be, just one of the most underrated coaches in the league, right? And I feel like me specifically, haven't talked about that on this podcast enough. I don't know if you touched on it your solos enough or not, but the way that he has adapted throughout the playoff series on a game-by-game basis and kind of realizing when things aren't going his way and making the correct, not only because you can go in there and try to mix things up, put the lines in the blender, right? And sometimes you'll just try to throw something at a wall and see if it sticks, right? But it really does feel like Craig Berube has in his mind, every player on this team is a chess piece, and not only are they viable in certain situations, but he knows how they're viable if that situation doesn't work out. He's got a plan 2, plan B, plan C, all the way down to Z. This man has an absolute plan when it comes to adapting to these situations, and I think he did a fantastic job of that in Game 2, and we saw the results, right? In Game 3, I feel like the Blues honestly outplayed the Avs for the majority of the game, but at the end of the day, the goaltending was a little bit shaky. You'd like to see some more saves from Ville Husso. But at the same time, the dude's going into a game cold turkey that he's not expecting to start. So I don't think you can hop on the bandwagon of, throw Charlie Lindgren in there and see what happens when
Chucky
the dude...
sideburns.
Great, right? Dude's got fantastic hair and sideburns, but hasn't had a lot of playoff experience at the NHL level, right? So I say give Ville Husso a chance. If he goes out there, still struggles, in this game, in the next game, I don't know. I think Craig Berube will make the right decision there. But to say that Ville Husso is washed and won't be viable in tonight's game against the Avalanche because of the sample size we saw in the last game, I think is doing him a disservice after everything he's been through this season and the sample size we saw there.
Yeah, and As much as, Jordan Binnington was a huge part of the Blues getting that win in game 2 and a huge part of the Blues getting the win in the series against the Minnesota Wild, I think it's more so just the way that the Blues are playing in front of them. We saw that in the regular season as well towards the end. Yeah, Ville Husso started to struggle, but the team was just playing better as a whole. And as a result, it just made it easier on the goalies. I think the Blues played a really, really complete team game. In game 2, it's not like Jordan Binnington went out there and stole the game. He played spectacular, of course, but I think Ville Husso would have been capable of winning that game as well. It's just about the team rallying around him and doing what they did in front of Binnington, playing the game that they played in game 2. That being said, they did lose in game 3, and like you said, Ville Husso wasn't completely solid. Kind of came into a game though cold turkey, especially after a play like that. Everyone's wires were a little crossed. I think that really
you could tell the crowd went way down after Binner went out too.
Yeah, and I think you saw it in the effort on the ice. They weren't playing as tight to their scheme as much anymore. They're trying to throw hits left and right. They definitely, unfortunately, the Avs got in the Blues' head a little bit, I think, in that game 3 loss. But the good thing is the Blues have shown that when they stick to the game plan and when they can execute darn well. They made the Avalanche look like not the Avalanche in game 2. I was very nervous after game 1 that this series could get out of hand quickly if the Blues didn't make the proper adjustments. And like you said, Tommy, Craig Berube did the impossible and made the Blues look like the better team than the Avalanche, which I'm sorry, on paper, they're just not. But in a playoff series, anything can happen, and Berube made the Blues look like the better team. McKinnon has struggled greatly in this series. I think he got an empty net goal or empty net assist, and that's all he's gotten so far.
If that, yeah. Makar's been quiet as well.
Knock on wood. At the beginning of the series, I said if you make the Avalanche beat you with their reserves, it's going to be a lot harder for them than people think. Obviously, they've still had success with that so far. Their reserves have been great, but it's a 2-1 series game in St. Louis tonight. Anything can happen. You head back to Colorado, tied up 2-2, best of 3. Who knows? It's going to be interesting for sure. In this third and final segment, Tommy and I are going to be getting into the keys to tonight's game and what it will take for the Blues to come away with a victory, plus giving our picks for the locked-on player of the game. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, if you got a hot take, if you think the Blues are going to come away with a victory tonight, I'm sure they're underdogs on BetOnline, so go put your money where your mouth is. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports development, including this year's basketball playoffs, hockey playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, UFC fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We'll be right back to wrap up today's episode. All right, Tommy. So, big game tonight. Probably the biggest of the season. You go down 3-1 to the Colorado Avalanche with 2 out of the next 3 games in Colorado. That is a tough hole to climb out of. However, you even the series up at 2. You shock the world. Best of 3. Anything can happen. Like I said, biggest 60 minutes of Blues hockey we've seen in 3 years is happening in 2 hours. We've seen stuff out of the Blues that makes me optimistic. We've seen stuff out of the Blues that makes me pessimistic. However, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think that they have a chance in tonight's game. It's gonna take flawless play, but we saw flawless play out of them in game 2. So, Tommy, in your opinion, what is the biggest key to channel that game 2 magic and even up the series at 2?
Oh, I think it's the same keys that they had to success. Game 3 wasn't a success, obviously, but I think that the game that they played for the majority of it, albeit, like we said, the goaltending wasn't great, but I think that the game that they played was pretty similar to the game that's going to spell success for them 9 times out of 10. So getting to their game early is going to be huge, as always, especially against the Avs, because the last thing you want to do is get into a track meet and let them enforce their will on you. That being said, like you said, Josh, this is a huge swing game, and I think if this series goes 2-2, it greatly benefits the Blues because of their playoff experience, because of their veteran experience, because they're leaning on those core guys right now like David Perron and Ryan O'Reilly. And the Avs have kind of gotten like they have a star-studded roster, obviously, but they're not really getting the headstrong push from McKinnon and Makar like a lot of people were expecting to. So, like I said, I think a 2-2 series greatly benefits the Blues and swings the momentum in their favor a ton. 3-1 series and the Avs start smelling blood with the talent that they have. It's gonna be hard to beat them firing on all cylinders. So I think the biggest key for the St. Louis Blues to be successful, and we talked about it a little bit, is like McKinnon, Makar, those kind of guys have been quiet. The Blues have had their top guys kind of pulling them through, but I think it's just a battle to see who gets the depth scoring first. And I think if the St. Louis Blues can get the production that they've got from their top guys so far and combine that with depth scoring with guys like Robert Thomas, Buchnevich, Barbashev, any guys like that stepping up. Jordan Kyrou, he's been scoring a lot this series, but he's also been coughing up a lot of pucks. So any of those guys to play a well-rounded, top-tier, elite status level playoff game, I think will spell victory for the St. Louis Blues and bring this series to a 2-2 tie.
Yeah, and the thing is, you're only going to keep McKinnon and Makar quiet for so long. They're bound to have a game where one or both of them takes over. The thing is, hockey's a game where you can have a player take over, and it doesn't mean immediate victory. I mean, Connor McDavid. First of all, I just want to talk about that for like 30 seconds. Connor McDavid has like more points right now in round 2. Like he would have been if the playoffs ended today and you compared Connor McDavid's points to like the point leaders from past playoffs. I'm pretty sure right now he's ahead of like 4 of the last 10 point leaders when the playoffs ended. He's got like 24 points already or something ridiculous like that, which, like I said, is more than anyone finished with in many playoffs in years past. But
I think it's 23. It's like 2.3 points per game.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
So absolutely ridiculous. However, the Oilers haven't gone undefeated, and Connor McDavid is putting on like maybe the best playoff run of the 21st century so far. And again, perfect example, he's doing that every single night, and the Oilers aren't winning every single game. So even if McKinnon or Makar has a McDavid S game, a lot of M names in there, it's not impossible. And I think a big key for the Blues is if that does happen tonight, if McKinnon or Makar, if the Blues are getting a ton of momentum and then McKinnon or Makar does McKinnon or Makar things, say that 5 times fast. I feel like I just did. If they start to, just chase the momentum like that, you can't get discouraged. You can't just hang your head and get frustrated because you did everything right, because you can do everything right against a guy like Nathan McKinnon and still find the puck end up in the back of your net. So that's going to be the biggest thing, is not getting discouraged when they inevitably give up goals, when they give up, good chances, when they take penalties, whatever, what have you. It's about staying in the game and sticking to their game, like you said. That being said, it's time to make our picks for Locked On Player of the Game. And Tommy, I'm going to pick a guy who was really, really successful for the Blues in the regular season. However, has only 1 goal and I think 39 career playoff games, something like that. And that is Robert Thomas. He was that your pick?
That was my pick.
I was going to say, I could see it on your face when I announced it.
As soon as you said great down the stretch in the regular season, I was like, oh no, he's going to do it.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if it's the exact number of games played in front of me, but I know he's got 1 goal. And yeah, he didn't find his goal scoring touch until this year, you could argue. However, I don't think he has. Does he have a goal in the playoffs this year? I don't know. Whatever.
I don't think so.
He's been underwhelming. But the thing is, he still looks like the Robert Thomas we know and love. It just kind of is the Robert Thomas of last year, where he's doing all the right things, but the points aren't falling. That's what we always said about Robert Thomas, is the points are the last thing to come. He's making the right reads, making the right plays. It's just not getting the finishing, whether it's him or the person he passes to. And I think we're kind of in a similar boat right now with him in the playoffs. And it's just about finding that next gear like he did in that regular season, pushing through. Because once he gets that confidence, the monkey off his back, and gets himself 1 goal, I think the floodgates are going to open. If he has a confident game tonight, I think it's going to do wonders for him and the rest of the team for the rest of the series, because he was kind of one of their offensive leaders down the stretch. He's a guy that really radiated energy, to the rest of the team when he was playing well. It felt like, the rest of the team rallied behind him. So if he can do that again tonight, even though he's split up, I believe he's split up from that Buchnevich Tarasenko line, unless they put it back together.
Yeah,
So
last game they were all on a different line,
yeah,
which I thought was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So I mean, if we can see, a similar performance from Robert Thomas that we've seen from him in the regular season, I think that's going to do wonders for the Blues. Because like you said, they've gotten that scoring from O'Reilly and Perron, and their defense has been playing well. If they can just add that extra horsepower in Robert Thomas having a good game, I like the Blues' chances.
I'm going to go a similar route. We were talking about that lethal line that the Blues had down the stretch of Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, and Tarasenko. You picked Robert Thomas. I'm going to take another guy on that line that is no longer a line for the St. Louis Blues. I think all things considered, the whole Kadri play scenario that ended up injuring Jordan Binnington felt to me like wind out of the sails, like teams against a wall, like almost like a wow, like you can almost be like this series is over. I don't think this series is over, but I feel like a lot of people had a dark cloud looming over their heads after that instance, in similar fashion to the hand pass. And I think of all the players on the St. Louis Blues, that if I had to pick one that would come out guns a-blazing the next game after the hand pass, or the next game after Jordan Binnington gets hurt, that has the experience, that has the love for his teammates, and that has the skill at the same time to completely take over a game, that player is Vladimir Tarasenko. And I think he's kind of been quiet this series. Obviously, he was not quiet against the Minnesota Wild. He does have the ability to take over games, and I think we're going to see that version of Vladimir Tarasenko tonight for the St. Louis Blues, and they're going to end up pulling out a W and evening up the series.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, he wasn't even that good in the Wild series beyond that one period that he had, which when you have a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko, sometimes that's all it takes for him to have a, quote, good series. He single-handedly won the Blues game. And it was a similar start to this series. He looked, beginning of the Wild series, he looked a little frustrated, a little disengaged, a little like he had a little bit less pep in his step, whatever, gripping the stick a little tightly, all the cliches. And then he got that first goal to go in, and then it was just like, boom. Like he turned the difficulty down to rookie mode after that. And sometimes that's all it takes is seeing a puck cross the line, that the back of the net like that. You can really just set something off in a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko. And in a similar sense to Robert Thomas, I think that's a great point, that if he gets going, it caught like the floodgates open. It's not like he'll just get one goal and be quiet. I mean, I'll even expand upon your pick and say if Vladimir Tarasenko scores tonight, it'll be more than one goal. That's typically how it goes with him, especially in the playoffs. He scores in bunches. So, yeah, I think that's a great pick. I think both of those guys are in similar boats, not having the postseason that they would want to have, but they're right on the cusp of doing something special for this Blues team. And if either one of those two guys has a big game tonight, I like the Blues' chances. They have their work cut out for them. Obviously, Ville Husso doesn't have as much playoff experience as Jordan Binnington, but they've won with him before. I said this heading into the playoffs that, there could be a worst-case scenario where some goalie is forced into a situation where they have to start. We saw both goalies in round one, and now we're going back to Ville Husso. It's a good problem to have. There's a reason why the Blues didn't trade Ville Husso at the deadline, and this tonight is it. That being said, I'm looking forward to the game, but I think that is all the time we have, Tommy, unless you got something to add.
Nope, that's all I got. I just appreciate you guys listening to us. As always, hoping that this turns into a long series. I think I said on the crossover with Locked On Avs that I feel like out of all the series right now, this is probably the most entertaining from a hockey standpoint. And I think the NHL as a whole deserves this to go 6 or 7 games. So
Yep, absolutely. That being said, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Subscribe to us on YouTube. The YouTube channel has been exploding lately. Really encouraging to see that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this one does as well. Hit that notification bell whenever we upload a new video. You'll be the first to know. They usually come out before the episodes come out on audio, so you can get a little early access sneak peek if you want to do that. Leave a comment. We'll try to interact with those. We've been getting more comments, so it's been a little harder, but still trying our best there. That being said, follow our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Locked On Blues, same as our YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. You can follow Tommy at TWelter15. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, let's go Blues.